Hello, world. This is Chris Aballo's podcast experiment, and I am Chris Aballo. Welcome to the show. Thank you for subscribing to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you also for subscribing on YouTube, where every Monday you get full video episodes of the show. And thank you for following the show at CAPEPOD on Instagram and TikTok, where you can find video clips from the show all the time. We are back at a shared universe, as you can tell from the champagne room style curtains, the backdrop that's going on here. And making a triumphant return to the show, this time not in work scrubs, and actually getting to participate in a real way. Please welcome back the wax guru, Ash Lazu.
Hi.
And as usual, thankfully, behind the board, operating all the video, the sound, all the good stuff, please welcome back Christian Cortez. Oops.
Hi, guys.
All right, you can shut your mouth now. You finish eating.
Okay.
Finish your snack.
Just chop it
Those
first
are-
real
yeah,
quick.
he gets rations every day. Every time he comes in. I'm like, I got snacks. What time you need me? It's going to be 3 hours, Christian. Probably. No. Well, we're about to find out. So, now we're heading into the holiday season, the real thrust of the holiday season. Don't laugh at that. And it's important that, all right, everybody behind the camera. Sorry. Oh, yeah, by the way, who's also here, pop your head in so you can wave to everybody, is the Mind Mix, Sally. She's here as well, as surprise audience. She just showed up with Ash, like, well, you get to sit on the other side of the camera. So I said thrust, and literally the two of them are doing this. Because that kind of show. No, but seriously, that's a joke in itself. But we're heading in the holiday season.
We're 12 here
which
at
is
Cape's Chris Aballo's podcast experiment.
at best.
At
On a
best.
good day, we're 12 years old. But the holidays are usually a difficult season for people. It's known as the time when people struggle the most with their mental health and emotional well-being and all of that, because it can be an intense time for people. Aside from just the general anxiety we kind of all feel around all the holidays, it's still it is a lot for people to deal with. And mental health has been a recurring subject on the show. It's not something I'm afraid to lean into, because it's a conversation people are having now. People also want to hear about things. Anytime we get into it on the show, I always have people reach out to me and say, I'm so glad you talked about this. I appreciate you talking about that. And, it's not the theme of the show, because that'd be off brand. There is no theme of the show. But it is something that I like talking about because it does make people more comfortable talking about it. My experience, and of course your experience, is you're a big advocate for mental health. And
I am.
we have a lot to, so there's a lot to go over. And we finally get to have this conversation. You and I talk about this all the time anyway.
Oh, yeah.
We share a lot of stuff with each other. We send a lot of stuff on social media. We send a lot of videos to each other. We send a lot of quotes, things like that. Because I can't remember who it was who said it, but the way it was put to me was, you have to look at, mental health or your well-being. It's not like, you take a shower once and you're clean and that's it. You have to keep taking showers.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that. It's something you need to work on. And it's also not a process that has an end to it. No one's ever 100% healed. That's kind of a myth. There's a lot of, especially right now on social media, there's a lot of therapy speak. And
sometimes wrong therapy speak.
Oh my God,
where
yeah. It's just, they're just co-opting like buzzwords.
Yeah.
And it's like everything is trauma. Like everybody applies trauma to everything. And like a lot of other, like self-care is another one that kind of gets hijacked or
overusing gaslighting.
Oh my God,
I don't think people understand the definition of gaslighting.
No, they don't. It's like, you can't tell me I'm wrong, you're gaslighting. It's like, you're wrong. Like there's
And
that
you hold
happens.
some accountability to your actions.
Oh my God, accountability. Yeah, no, people don't like accountability. But there's a lot of that out there that's also not great that you don't hear. I see a lot of people giving advice but not necessarily talk about their experience, which is one of the reasons I wanted to talk with you about this, because you put a lot out there during your run on First Class, Second Place. And you're about to with Exposed with Ash, your new show launching. Is there a date? Or
There's no date.
Prepping?
We're prepping.
Gotcha. Okay. They're banking shows. I'll be on there ruining that show soon enough.
Not ruining it.
Well, it hasn't happened yet. So listen, based on today, who knows?
I called in my Bravery Brothers.
You did, actually.
So.
It's going to be an all-star show if there ever was one. I'll say that. It's impressive. It's an impressive lineup we're going to have. But that's going to be basically the theme of Exposed with Ash.
Yeah.
Is talking a lot about mental health, and but to put it out there as a means of helping people. It's not just to spotlight you and like, look how great I am and how healed and how evolved I am.
No, and it's not just mental health. It's exposing, the things that we don't know about. So even with, I'm a special needs mom. So,
Right.
I go down that rabbit hole where it's just like there's things I didn't know that I want people to learn ahead of time. Like I had to learn through mistakes.
Yeah.
So I do want people to learn, like, here are the resources, here are the website links, go do with it what you will, but
Right.
the information's there. So.
And you do that. You'll take questions from people on Instagram. You'll be like, ask me anything about mental health. Ask me anything about being,
Yeah.
mom of an autistic child and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And you do. You get a lot of people who reach out because they want to know. And again, it's one of those things where I feel like people, even if it's in an anonymous way, like questions on your Instagram story can be, it's like, people actually want to be able to reach out, even in an anonymous way,
It's cool. It's pretty, like, the amount of people that want information, it's refreshing to know. Because there's people that hide from mental health, and there's people like, no, I want to understand what you went through so that I can have a better path to kind of navigate it.
And it also, one of the things that I've found gratifying about talking about it is because it also helps you feel like your experiences were not in vain. Like, well, I didn't go through this for nothing. As much as it helped me and I to grow and learn from this, if I'm able to put it out there and tell people about it, hopefully they can avoid those mistakes. Hopefully they can take a different path, or they can, assess themselves before they get to, whatever point. And it's something that, just to recap, I've talked about it through on a bunch of episodes in the past, just off the top of my head, into 168, 169 back in 2021. Myself, Andrew, and Ryan did 2 parts about mental health. I went into my first panic attack in 168 and how I thought I was dying, and that whole thing. That was my first brush with anxiety. Yeah. And the thing with that is that wasn't enough of a wake-up call. So that was October of 2015. And it still took until...
And it was on air that you had?
No.
Oh, I thought you said...
No,
okay.
I woke up one morning like I just felt like something was trying to burst through my chest from the inside out. And actually felt like I was being stabbed from the inside out.
Oh, I thought I was dying one time. Like, I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, I'm too young. I'm like, wait, does it start at 30s where we had the heart problems? Like, what's going on? And I was in a church. So
really?
I'm like, I'm evil. I'm like, I'm not
God, this is it.
Here.
I repent.
They were right about me. So I remember it felt
my skin is burning.
It felt like something was squeezing my heart. So I had to, I ran home and I'm like, Jacob, I'm dying. Something's happening. I went to the hospital and they're like, yeah, no, you need to relax. That's a panic attack.
Right.
But it was just, in my mind, I felt fine. My body, I felt fine. It was just my chest that,
right.
Like, it feels like somebody clawed you and just held on.
Yeah. Oh, I've heard about that because people confuse it with like heart attacks. Where it's like something's like squeezing.
It's scary.
Oh God, it's very scary because it never happened to me. I mean, I didn't even have at that point. I didn't even have the not that I didn't know what anxiety was, but like I thought anxiety and depression were like freckles. You got them or you don't. I didn't realize it was something that can develop or can, as you evolve. I mean, there's certainly with depression there seems to be a biological, component. It's genetic for a lot of people, and you can kind of trace back to people who may not have been diagnosed because different era, but.
So I found out. I didn't know. I guess a lot of people know about it. I didn't, but like if I'm pregnant, I can pass that trauma and anxiety and all that through to my kid.
Because your nervous system, right?
Yeah. And I'm going to have somebody on the show to explain it a little bit better. That's part of Exposed. So when I was, not to talk too much about that, but when I was pregnant with my son, I was homeless, with a 1-year-old daughter, pregnant, not knowing what's going on. And all that anxiety and depression and just always crying and wondering what's going to happen.
Right.
My baby felt that, and part of me feels guilty because he did come out. He's autistic. He has sensory issues, and so on. But I internalized that. We're like, oh my God, maybe it's my fault. Because I learned later on, like around this year, my son's 8 now. So I just learned that you can pass all that down to your child. So it's like, I know you said it's biological, but really it does. We pass our trauma, we pass all of that. And that's why it's so important to like break those generational curses and, change the narrative in your family. And, we're going to talk about the holidays. And that's a big part of learning how to cut that tie.
Totally.
Of every year we go here, we fight, we do this, you know?
Yeah. And I feel like almost, not everybody, but almost everybody has that. And people deal with it in different ways.
Yeah.
I've said on the show before, it's a joke, but it's not a joke. It's just like, Uncle Steve loves to drink. No, he's an alcoholic. He can't help himself. Like there's a difference. It's not, he doesn't love it. He doesn't know how to do without it, kind of thing. It's, people, people have coping mechanisms and ways
Yeah.
to deal with it, or people fall into patterns where you see a relative and it just sparks something, and you want to fight with them, or like I can't be there if so and so is going to be there, kind of thing. It's like there's that where it's maybe not. People tend to think of let's say the more isolated people, maybe people who don't have family to spend holidays with, people who feel more alone, and that's just as valid as the people who don't like getting together with family, where they're triggered by family, where there's been
It's that
some
part
trauma.
that triggers by family.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah. There's a lot of that. I know plenty of people who can't be around family for various reasons, or who don't visit during certain holidays.
I know I
for
can't.
various reasons.
I messed
Yeah.
up Christmas one year.
It's your fault.
And I'm not I am not sorry.
All right. You want to talk about it or no?
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, all right. So there was one. Oh
This is gonna
man,
be good.
there was one year. Again, my son's on a spectrum. So when he was younger, like I don't know what I'm doing as a parent. I don't think anybody does, but
No, they
especially
never
a
do
special needs parent, I don't know. I don't know what I was doing. Am I allowed to curse?
Oh,
All
hell
right, 'cause
yeah.
It's like slip. I'm trying not to let it slip.
What kind of show do you think this is?
I
Fuck yeah, we're allowed to curse.
So this one year, I can't remember which year, but my son was younger, and I didn't know how to help him through whenever he's having like a sensory meltdown. And
Okay,
a sensory meltdown, it's more like if there's too much going on. So let's say, I'm trying to describe it so people best understand it. Let's say you're trying to watch your phone, and you have somebody else screaming in the background, and then you have the TV on max, and then you have lights flickering, and
So it's like sensory overload.
yeah, so you just want to watch just one thing, and you can't concentrate on it because everything else is going around.
Right.
It's like a constant. That's what it feels like for them all the time.
Right.
So if there's too much, it's like that. It's easy to just kind of like, I can't do this, and just melt down. And because he can't describe how he's feeling, it's instant screaming. He's trying to put his coat on and walk out the door. And it's like, no, come on, come sit down. So this one year, he was having a meltdown. And I'm sure there's a better way of saying it. I just don't know at the moment. But I'm trying to like sit down and sit him in my lap because he was a baby. And I'm like, okay, just, relax. It's okay. And my mom tries to kind of like booty bump me away and say, let me handle it. And it was more of like a very old school way of the parent kind of just looking down and just doing one of those like, you need to stop and, just.
Yeah, it's not helpful, but
No,
they think like
but they
you
think
need
it's
to assert
helpful.
yourself as the parent so the
Yeah.
kid stops acting up. No, it's not like that.
So when I tell you I messed up Christmas, the mood shifted like that. Because I looked at her and I was like, you barely raised your 4 kids. You're not going to tell me how to raise mine.
Oof.
Listen, she was just like, you saw the look. The look was like, bitch. And then Jacob's in the background. Jacob, my husband, is in the background like, here we go.
Yeah.
Here we go. So then,
Worms.
but my mom, she held herself together. I know she wanted to snap back, and it was like, well, if you didn't call DYFS, I didn't call DYFS. That was other adults around the whole, you know what I mean? So when I tell you it spiraled. So I was like, you know what? My son put his coat on. And I was like, all right, he wants to go, so we're just going. So we're just starting to get ready to head out. And then she turns around. She goes, but wait, we didn't have dessert yet. So in her head, she reverts back to, wait, don't leave.
Right.
So then I was like, all right, well, right now it's what my son wants. So if he wants to go, we're going to go. If I could get him to calm down, then we'll stay.
Right.
But for years, it was just a constant, I have to be on edge to find out what's going to be the new thing with my son this year. So it was just, and this is the first year. My son's 8. This is the first year I'm like, yeah, no, we're doing holidays in my house. You're welcome to come. I'll have a quiet corner for you if you get overwhelmed. But it's my house this year.
Right.
And it's the first time that I've been able to put my foot down in a way where it's like, I'm inviting whoever I want to invite. You're welcome to come. If you don't want to come, that's okay. But I'm not, like that year, that was an ugly year because it was just, it got nasty. It was just, the mood shifted. Everybody's triggered at this point because it's like, I have my own experience.
You and Ash said we're mom.
Yeah, my other sisters had their own. Like we all grew up separately, so we all had our own perspective on how we grew up, our own version, and it was just that was my fault that year. But each year it's somebody. It's not just each year it's somebody. So that was my 1 year.
Well, that's the other thing too. Is like in some form, all this stuff comes out. Whatever you're carrying around with you, it could manifest itself as a panic attack. It could show up as...
I didn't start getting panic attacks until this year.
Really?
Yeah, I thought that I was handling things well, going to therapy. journaling, doing all that.
Yeah.
Nope. I think I handle it well. In my mind, I'm good. My mind, I handle it well. But then 2 weeks ago, my eye was twitching for 2 weeks. And I'm like, I'm fine. It's like twitch. I'm good. Twitch.
That happens to me when I get stressed. I can feel it a little bit in my left eye.
That's not okay.
No, it's not. But that's one of those things where I realize, like, I haven't had a full-blown panic attack. It's been a while. It's probably been 2 years, I think.
That's good.
Since I've had a full-on, like, panic
So
attack.
how do you feel about medication? Because that's tricky. Some people are like, I would never. And other people are like, yeah, no, I need it.
It's never been recommended for me.
Okay.
I started going to therapy in California, which is the funny thing. So my first panic attack in October of 2015, I didn't start therapy until August of 2017. So it still took me a while to actually, And it's one of those things like you have to be ready for it. Because if you're going because other people are telling you to do it, you're going to be reluctant just like you are with anything else. It's like, oh, you should do this, you should do that. I started when I was ready. Of course, like everybody says, I wish I'd started going sooner, but I had to wait until I was actually ready to just like, okay, I feel like I'm at the bottom here. So please help me get out. But
but pause. That's
okay.
Say that again. You were at the bottom. You said, please help me get out.
Yes.
That's important.
Yeah. Well, you have to hit some kind of bump. So and just for context, because I've talked about it before, but also 236 episodes. I can't imagine you've heard them all. But so what happened to me was I'm pausing right now because it's still the part of me that I don't recognize myself in it because it's not me. And yet it's who I was for a while. I was incredibly angry for a while. I had a very, very short fuse. And it was made worse by the fact that the three people closest to me in California during that time were women. It was my sister, it was a friend of mine, and it was my friend who became my girlfriend as well. And I had no kind of fuse at a point. And when I think back, again, I'm even hesitating right now. It's not that I'm afraid to talk about it. It's just like it bothers me. Like it's one of those things like my nervous system is just like, oh, you don't want to. But I'm not an angry person. Granted, you've known me for 9 months, but still, I'm not an angry person. I'm not that guy. But suddenly I was that guy. I was a guy who was screaming and yelling. And even at the point when any one of them was in tears, even that wouldn't stop me. I would just like see red and I would be angry. And there was a lot of underlying like, okay, this is something I need to address. There's too much going on here. But I was at the point where I felt just like, okay, I don't want to be like this anymore. And that's what got me into therapy. And that's why I started seeing a female therapist. I sought one out because I said, there's a frequency I'm not dialed into as a man anyway. And, we can make all the, male-female jokes we want, Mars, Venus, whatever. But all the more reason I was like, okay, I obviously have some relationship residue from the past that I'm carrying with me that I've never bothered to scrub off before. And I need to. And it's making me angry now because I don't think it's just by chance that this is, that they're, three closest people to me are women and I have no kind of fuse with them. There's something there. So that was where I was just like, I
love that you're able to pinpoint that. Not many people are self-aware where they can sit there and say, wow, this is a me problem.
Yeah. Well, that's at that point, I'm almost 36 and I'm just like, I can't do this. Now I don't recognize myself. And now there's the shame and everything that comes, when you come down, when you stop seeing red after you've just gone off on somebody, and then there's the shame and all the feelings that come with that where it's just like, who am I? And literally looking at myself in the mirror, I'm just like, who is this person? How do I turn into this? How do I do like a complete 180 from my generally calm and upbeat and, fun-filled demeanor and turn into that? Like, that's such a drastic switch. I'm just like, I can't, no, because that's not actually who I am. How I go about my days and how you know me is how I actually am. So the fact that I got there, I was just like, I can't do this. So that really was the bottom for me, where I was just like, please help me. Where I went in and I was just like, and I was all discombobulated in my first therapy session as well. Like I couldn't look the woman in the eye, and I was just kind of like all over I couldn't even sit still. It was really.
I remember my first therapy session. I think those are the ones where it's like, whoa, I'm really messed up.
It says a lot when you're actually there, because I'm like, what do we talk about? Because that's the other thing that made me hesitant, but it would have been helpful to have any kind of reference point, because there wasn't anybody I knew in my personal life who was going to therapy. So it wasn't as, what people know for the most, prior to, I feel like mental health in the last like 3.5 years, since the pandemic especially, is more of an open conversation now, and people are up for talking about it. But, back even a few years before that, therapy was still, I don't want to say it was a joke, but just like in media. I mean, look at a show like Frasier. All the patients are nuts. All the people calling into that show are fucking idiots. So, it's a lot of times it's played for laughs, or like, in movies and TV shows and all that, just in media. And I will give credit, though, as someone who just finally watched The Sopranos for the first time in the beginning of 2023, and thinking back to that starting in 1999, I think that was the first representation of what therapy actually is like. And I thought, wow, that's kind of mind-blowing that this was actually in the lexicon. It was an extremely popular show 24 years ago, and actually shows what therapy is really like. And that doesn't have to be about medication. It could just be, you're talking about this, you're describing it like this, because as we know, the way you talk about things reveals a lot about yourself. Yeah. And when you start talking in therapy, it's one of those things like, oh, wow, that's how I sound when I talk about, family members or friends or exes or whatever. Yeah. You're like, oh, wow, that does say a lot about me. It's one of those things like you don't know until you're talking about it. Now, I couldn't talk without crying. And I didn't realize I was always so hurt. I carried so much hurt around, but I covered that in like a hard shell where when I tell you my fuse was short, I would just hit people. Like I was just a fighter. I was just, oh, you pissed me off? Okay, let's fight. Who's that? That's Scrappy Ash. That's little Tasmanian devil. I mean, it comes out from time to time. Well. Does it come out of nowhere? Yeah. But it's one of those things like you don't realize until you actually have to take a look at yourself. Like there's so many things we do subconsciously that you don't think about, where it's like, oh, I need to actually figure out what's going on, which is how I realized like, oh, I have this relationship residue that I haven't dealt with and I'm still carrying around with me, and it's affecting how I'm treating people now. Yeah. And it's affecting the way I look at, relationships and all that. And it's damaging, and you kind of have to take a step back and assess and and look at yourself, and also be a little bit objective about it. Well, if I had a friend who came to me and was telling me the things, if they were telling me like it happened to them, then wouldn't I have a different perspective on it? Well, of course you would. Like we can't even, it's so personalized. We can't remove ourselves from the situation a lot of times either. I mean, it's the same with, it's another thing that gets thrown around a lot, but like self-talk. It's, the amount of times we say things about ourselves that are negative or unsupportive or whatever it is, the amount of times we put ourselves down in our internal monologue. If we heard any of our friends saying that, we would immediately shut them up and just be like, don't say that. Don't talk about it. Yeah. Don't say that about yourself, blah, blah. But we won't do that for ourselves. It's one of the things. I think that's a muscle that you have to strengthen. Totally. You have to make sure that you treat yourself better than you treat anybody else. Because we live in ourselves. We live in our skin, and you got to make sure you like it. Of course. You're living true to yourself. I get that. But yeah, the idea of just even having to look after yourself. Yeah. Because in some way, a lot of us think like, oh, it's noble to put everybody else before ourselves. Nope. And it's not. It doesn't mean you're being selfish, but you have to, take yourself into consideration and not, make yourself uncomfortable for the sake of other people. That's what I was. Which I did for a long time. I think a lot of us do it for a long time before we just put our foot down like, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. Yeah. Well, that's it. Not being able to say no to people, feeling guilty about saying no, or even, the people-pleasing part. Or not wanting people to hurt how you hurt, so you accept behavior that you should not accept. Yeah. Or you should shut down as soon as you see it. That's one of the things you and I have talked about, too. The idea, and I remember telling you about it, it was a couple of months ago, and saying I've had to learn how to be compassionate from a distance. Oh, that's when we were talking. You said, look, stop empathizing so much because you'll find yourself empathizing with a serial killer. Yeah. And I held that in my head, and I say it multiple times where I'm like, no, I got to stop. Yeah, your empathy has to have limits. Yeah. Because it's very easy to, what's so funny about that? These two are laughing their asses off. We're having a vulnerable moment here. What's going on? Oh, fine. We got a bunch of hackers. Statler and Waldorf, everybody. They're here joining us on Cape 236. No,
just to that line where it's like you can empathize with a serial.
Well, I mean, when you
so can I tell you my experience though? Sure. So because I am a mother to a child that's on the spectrum, you notice little quirks, right? So when I watched the Jeffrey Dahmer documentaries, not the documentaries, the show, I was like, oh no, his mom loaded herself up. Don't laugh at me. I'm sorry. But I felt bad. I was like, his mom loaded up. He can't help it. His father picked up roadkill and taught him how to fucking slice that bitch up. It was taught to him, and he took it and ran with it. There's certain
Sally's face looks like a radish. She's holding back so much laughter right now. She's a horrible person.
Same thing. If you watch Killer Kids, go on Netflix, watch Killer Kids, and then you hear these horrible backstories, and the fuck do you expect them to do?
Right.
Well, no,
like they snap. Their brains snap from their backgrounds.
In that understanding, yes, I get it. It's just you automatically went to the most extreme case of it.
No, I did.
Like
that was me. You know how I talk. I talk in extremes. Everything's got to be.
I understand.
Everything
bro.
needs to be elevated for a joke.
We went from like, yeah, no, it depends on the environment you were raised in, and then so Jeffrey Dahmer. So
let me tell you why I feel bad for him.
Oh my god!
Well, there's a hot take if I've ever heard one.
But just picture little Timmy getting locked in the closet and beaten all the time. What difference is little Timmy gonna
Harry
know?
Potter didn't turn to the dark side. Or,
yeah, but
he lived under the stairs.
But that's where we go into. Yeah. It takes a certain kind of strength to take that background and become who we are today.
Oh yeah,
totally.
You know what I mean?
Chain.
Yeah.
To actually respond to what you said, it's literally like it can depend on the circumstances of how you were raised and what brought up. I mean, I know kids who had horrible fucking upbringings, but ended up being some of the nicest people I know because they refused to be that way. And who are then terrified to also become parents. That's another thing where it's like they don't ever want to have even the remote possibility of.
So
they don't want to be that person.
If I'm going to be honest about this, I became a young mom because I wanted children, so I knew what love actually was. And it hurts me when I think about it. I'm trying not to get choked up because I have more in my brain, I have more bad moments than good. My perception, it was more dark than like those little glimmers of, oh yeah, we did this and it was great. I can't, because it was just a high stress environment. I can't remember. I don't have a good childhood. My adulthood is when I got to enjoy life. And whenever somebody says, oh, you haven't seen that movie, I was surviving.
Right.
I was surviving. Even when my husband and I got together, we didn't have money for cable. So we'll go to the barber shop and pick up bootleg DVDs, which by the way, we've been together for 14 years. So yeah, we were watching DVDs. I saw your face as soon as I said
Christian
DVDs.
grew up in Jersey City.
No.
Or the barber shop.
No, it was a face of, oh my God, the nostalgia, because we used to do the same. I listen, when we moved, I realized how vast my bootleg collection actually was, because the movies that I had watched, oh man, I guess I just blocked in my mind that, oh yeah, there's laughter in that part of the movie, but there's not.
There's not. That's the audience.
There's no audience.
Because there's no audience. Because
everything plays like a sitcom.
Oh yeah, because you had all those copies of those bullshit movies, but it was just so funny because I would always recall why is there nobody laughing at this part? Oh. Yeah. So, it was just a face of oh my God, bring me back
to the bootleg
to the bootleg days. Era. Now we get simultaneous release, so it's just easier.
Yeah. Now you just have somebody's password, and you don't need to worry about bootlegging it.
Pretty much.
Sharing. Oh my God. No, but listen, that in my typical, over the top style of punctuate. I mean, it was a joke, but it wasn't a joke. But it's just listen, you can empathize with a Jeffrey Dahmer type. If you let yourself go, they'll just be that's not saying you are.
Well, to a point.
Well, that's it. It's just you can, but that doesn't forgive the crimes and the horribleness.
I think it comes to a point where it's just the understanding of the why.
Yeah.
And then that's where you cut that off,
Exactly.
It's just
that's
understand why, and then
but think about all the
things.
Think about all the ways we're forgiving with people in our lives, though. Where it's just oh, it's okay, or it's okay, particularly when you're the one on the receiving end of the hurt, and you want to be empathetic towards them. Where it's just oh, well, it's because they're this or because they're that, and it's easy to kind of forgive and not consider that. But that's why it's no, your empathy has to have limits. You have to be able to say you know what, if that's how it is with you, I need to look after myself. You go be the way you are. And I
recognize the patterns.
Yeah. Well, that's it. That stuff reveals itself over time with people, where people end up showing you who they are. So it's
but that's the best though, is when they tell on themselves without even realizing it.
Yeah. And you sit back and watch it boom.
Yeah, exactly. That's honestly, it's my favorite pastime. It's yeah, you tell me all about yourself, man, and I will never see you again.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's the best.
Yeah.
Like just even like little things. Like it's like how they might view certain people, how they might say things a certain way. It's just I'm not.
Or even
about
try
it.
to manipulate a situation to go in your favor, and it's like, no, I caught that.
Yeah.
You know?
That's weird. It's so fucking weird.
Yeah. People are weird. People are weird, complex beings.
Yes.
They really are. But that's one of those areas where, we need to actually look out for ourselves, because it's just like, well, it's very easy to forgive other people for their shortcomings. So like, oh, I understand why. And yet we still need to consider, you need to consider yourself first, not in a selfish way, but in like, I can't put myself in a situation where I'm compromising my emotional well-being or my mental health or something like that. So the idea of just like, I need to give you just, I mean, look, it's not something that I have an easy time with even now, because, for instance, I have a friend of mine who I haven't spoken to him in over a year. I love him like a brother, always will. I'll speak to him again at some point because I'm not a never say never person. So I'm sure there's a point we're going to come in contact, and it's not going to be, there's not going to be any animosity. I'm not going to be angry about it or anything like that. But it was, he had sent me a text message about something. I had responded asking if everything was okay, and haven't gotten a response since. Now I'm of two minds about it, because it's like, there's the part of me that says, well, you're an adult, grow up and learn how to communicate. But also there's the empathic part of me that says, if his way of dealing with it at this point is not dealing with it and not communicating, then I need to understand that. And I flip-flop between both when I think about it. Like when he comes to mind, there's a part of me that's just like, God damn it, will you just be able to tell me, like if you're pissed at me, just tell me why, or whatever is going on, just say so. But there's also the part of me that's just like, if he doesn't want to deal with me, he doesn't want to deal with me, and there's nothing I can do about it. So it's not always like, again, no one's ever completely healed, but there's still some things where you can struggle between. You can have two thoughts and feelings at the same time about one person. And it's not easy, but like that's a perfect example for me where I'm just like, well, if that's how he has to deal with it, I need to be okay with it. But there's no part of me that feels compelled to like reach out and just be like, you asshole, why haven't you talked to me kind of thing.
So I had an experience like that where it's just, I'm so ashamed of myself sometimes, because it's like I chased after a friend who just didn't want me around, and I couldn't wrap my head. It was very toxic. I couldn't wrap my head around it. And I remember, and this is a proper use of gaslighting, let me just add that. But I remember asking her, like, what did I do wrong? Like, I know a few years back, like, I was very, like, you're going to hear my opinion whether you liked it or not. And not everybody wants to hear it.
Yeah.
So back then, she was going through stuff. I kept giving her my opinion, and she just kind of cut me off. But I didn't know what I was doing. So I messaged her, and we were friends for years. So I thought we were stronger than that, just like a quick cutoff. Like, anybody in my life, if you tell me I did something that hurt you, I'm going to apologize. I'm going to make it better. Like, I know how to hold myself accountable. Right. I know how to make sure that I try to be as self-aware as as possible. And I kept asking her, like, what did I do? Like, I will call her. She wouldn't. I was so embarrassed. There was one time she posted her screen of, I think she was trying to prove a point. And in her FaceTime messages, because I will call her FaceTime and regular, it showed over 200 FaceTimes and a lot of calls. And I didn't call back to back like that, but it was like we would talk once a week. So I'll call, oh, no answer. And then it's just, you get into routine when you call people. So, you jump in the car, call them real quick. Oh, they didn't answer. Okay. So I knew the majority of those calls, it was me.
Right.
So I saw that and I was like, whoa, I'm a good friend. Like, when you fish through all the, opinions at that time or whatever, like, I'm a good friend. I show up, I listen, I support you. That, and to see that she didn't want that.
Right.
And when I asked her, what did I do? Like, can we fix it? Like, let's talk. Like, let's meet up. It was like I was begging her.
Yeah.
And she turned around and she was like, it's all in your head. And that's what gaslighting is. You're twisting somebody's reality. I know something's wrong. Something's very clearly wrong. You're not answering my phone calls. We haven't spoken. When you want to get waxed, you could come and fucking get waxed. Okay? And then when I'm thinking everything's fine, like, oh, let's hang out. Yeah, sure, we'll hang out. And then I call you the next day to try and plan something. Nothing. Back to radio silence, back to the passive-aggressive post on social media. And I was like, you know what?
Yeah.
I got the hint. I thought we were stronger than that. I thought I was the exception. And it was that friend where I learned nobody's ever the exception. Ever. I don't care how much you think that they love you. I don't care how much you love them. Nobody's an exception.
That's the other thing, too. The idea that, there's a lot of, I think part of self-awareness and, going through things therapeutically. I think part of that is also kind of like there's a myth busting quality to it where it's just like, oh, unconditional love. Unconditional love doesn't exist. It exists with your pets. But with people, no, it is conditional.
Yeah.
And I'm not even saying that's a bad thing because you shouldn't feel like you are entitled to no matter what this person's going to love. No. Not
or this person loves me. They would never do that.
Exactly. Yeah. Like you can't look at it that way, which frankly is healthy. I feel better having an understanding of that now.
Yeah.
Whereas, once upon a time, it was easy to believe just like, oh, they're so-and-so, of course. Or like, we've been friends forever. Or like, they're family or whatever, where we tell ourselves, oh yeah, everything's always going to be cool. And it's not. So the idea that you actually need to consciously participate and at the same time reciprocate with people as well.
Yeah.
Where there is some give and take and not just,
always giving.
Always giving. Yeah. Which I'm guilty of
too. So am I, but I don't do it much now. I used to do it back then. Like I would give you enough rope. You want to take, keep taking. But that rope, you're going to twine it around your neck and hang yourself. Maybe I shouldn't have said it like that.
Well.
But it's like I give you enough rope. And when you fall on that rope,
right,
you're done. That's the end of our relationship. That's the death of any access you had to me.
Right.
So I'll keep giving you a rope. You want to keep taking, guy? Keep taking. But when I put a stop to that, you're done.
Yeah. No, I do that too. That's another thing that I have to learn. And I think I'm guessing you'll probably identify with this too. The idea of giving people grace, which I like to do, and being understanding and saying,
let me be a little nicer.
You know what? Well, it's like, okay, I get it that, there's other people, and for all types of relationships, obviously, where it's like there's other people in your life, you have stuff going on, we're all busy.
Yeah.
I'm not crazy about the idea of just like, oh, I've been so busy. It's like, well, we are all busy. But, everybody's busy. All of us feel like we're running in place these days, honestly, and like not getting enough done, not as much done as we need to. But it's fine to give people grace and just, give them their room and space. Exactly.
Grace and space.
But not to the point where you're giving them grace where it excuses bad behavior or where you're overlooking the fact that this person isn't putting the same amount of energy in as you are or anything like that. And even that is something that I've had to learn just in the last few years of like, okay, I'm willing to give this person some room or literally a grace period.
That's a good one. A grace period.
Yeah, I'm going to hang, on the periphery for a little bit. But like, if they stop talking or like I'm the only one initiating a conversation or something like that, then it's like, all right, I'm done.
I like the grace. I'm going to give you a grace period. That's a good one.
But that's just through experience. It's just something I've kind of had to figure out along the way where it's like, it's very easy because it's easy to be, sympathetic to a person. Just be like, oh, they're going through a lot. Oh, they're busy. Or, even with people, I know plenty of people who haven't dealt with their trauma. People who have, there's me. I consider just to define it for everybody watching. So everybody has degrees of trauma. Did you have a family? Did you have parents? Did you grow up in a society? You have trauma. However, many like me have trauma with a lowercase t. Ash has trauma with a capital T, a big T.
It's actually called complex PTSD.
See, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's complex. So it's like it's stacked on top, and it's one after another, and it's like
it compounds. It does. It stacks.
But I like big T, little T. But I do know complex trauma. That's serious. You're supposed to be medicated,
right? Well, it's also the idea like it's not. And this is the thing. Now I can only speak from my experience, which again, little T trauma, but.
Which it's still valid. It's still
totally.
You know what I mean?
Like, I'm not,
I use
it's not a contest.
Like, but I tell
you have more trauma
people,
than I do, so you can't. Don't listen to what I have to say.
Some people do that sometimes.
Oh, people totally do.
So I always say like, all right, let's say Timmy drowned in 4 feet of water and I drowned in 9 feet of water.
You still drown.
You're still drowning.
Exactly.
Like we're still struggling. That's it.
Yeah, it's not a competition.
Oh, people use
but
it
people
as a
do.
competition.
Oh, people totally do. People try to one up you with their trauma all the time. They're just like, oh, you think you had it tough, that kind of thing. Oh God, yeah. But it's something.
It's happened.
Whoa.
Sorry, I'm replaying a conversation in my head.
Yeah, something just came to the surface in a big way. Like, yeah, you're that evil laugh, everybody.
The cackle.
Yeah, let's get a drop of that. But
oh shit.
It's not something that like. Because I know people have not dealt with their capital T trauma. And it's frustrating on a certain level because as somebody who has dealt with, my lesser degrees of trauma, I get why people are hesitant to start dealing with that and, looking at themselves. Because it's not easy to look at yourself in the mirror. It's not easy to look at the reasons why and look under the hood because you don't know what you're going to find when you start looking under the hood. I get that it's not easy and you have to be ready. Like I said, it took me a while until I was finally ready. And then when I was, I'm like, oh, I'm so glad I did this. Because for me, there's no comparison between waking up every day in the mud and actually waking up every day and cleaning off the mud. Completely different experience. And I would take that as difficult as it is to actually start cleaning the mud off, so much better than just waking up in it every day.
Yeah.
So as much as just like, oh, I don't want to deal with that because this is going to be really tough. Well, it's really tough not dealing with it too. And again, I can only speak from my experience, but for me, there's just no comparison at all. And I feel for people who aren't ready to deal with it yet, but at the same time, I've had to remove myself from those situations where I'm just like, you know what? I can't. If you're not dealing with this, like it's nothing I can help you with, And also,
I understand.
In related news, my Captain Sabaho burned his tights, so those days are long over. But But that's very much a real thing. Where it's just like not like to save people, but just like again the idea of just like, oh, it's because of this and because of that and the things you will tolerate from somebody. It's just like, no, you have to deal with it. It's everybody's responsibility to make sure their mud doesn't splash on somebody else.
Yeah.
And it's important to take ownership of that. I know that sounds very
but I like to so I've used it before. And it was before I kind of cut a friendship off because I was just so tired of like it's one thing to sit and listen and let's help each other out. It's like a therapy session talking to friends. It's important. And I just got so angry and I told him, I said, stop bleeding on people who have not cut you.
That's really good too.
It's like you're hurting me. You're hurting me.
Yeah.
And that person disregarded it. I'm like, you know what? Fuck off.
Yeah.
Like that's where my tolerance comes. Like it's just no. And I've said it before on another episode where my kids triggered me into healing and that I had to look within with that. And it was so difficult because I'm breaking patterns, I'm breaking cycles. And that started with me. So you want to talk about angry? I would get so angry and I had to go on medication for a few years because I felt my blood pressure rising where my ears would ring. I would get dizzy. Like I was 22 years old, 24, almost about to have a fucking stroke, because my blood pressure raised that high and I would just scream and get angry at my poor children and it wasn't their fault.
Right.
That was from somewhere else. And it was just like, you know what? No. I sat down and I talked to Jacob. I'm like, I really think I need help.
Yeah.
I need help. And he's just like, okay. And he's so supportive. He's so great because he's just like, okay, what do you need?
And that's insanely important. Like,
yeah,
you cannot...
I'm very fortunate to have him there because if I'm slipping, like there was one episode where when I tell you I was flipping out, I don't know what I said or what I did, but he pulled me to the side and he's like, you are a very beautiful woman. When you act like that, your whole face changes. He was like, and I don't know who you are. It's ugly, and I know that's not you. So I was just like, you think I'm ugly?
Oh, you had to go be a woman about it? God damn it.
So I was like, you think I'm ugly? I'm like, fine. What do I need to do to not be ugly? But it was like, of course, we turned it into a joke. But at the same time, I'm like, all right, let's figure this out.
Right.
So it's like, I have somebody on my team. But man, like if people knew what I went through to have that person, I've been with him since I was 18, 19 years old. He has seen those phases. Like we got toxic 20s. I call it toxic 20s all the time. Like the toxic 20s. But he's seen all these phases. And I have to say, knock on wood that it stays like this. But 30s, like this is our peace. This is our peaceful era. So now it's so much easier now that we dealt with most of the stuff that we needed to. It's peaceful, and we both noticed that after we exit certain family members out and we kind of like revoke that access. You don't have access in our home. You don't have access to most things that we go through. If you want to see the kids, you're going to see them in person, not on social media. Like we completely took our power back and it's peaceful because all these people had a hand in just like picking and they'll start a fight. They'll come into your house, mess things around, leave with a smile on. And you're here dealing with the residual energy of that low-key hate that they have. Yeah. That jealousy.
Yeah, that they leave behind after they walk out the door and you still have to deal with it.
Yeah, so I think, learning when to separate that's so important.
Yeah.
You know, and medication's okay. Like, I'm not on it anymore. There are times I flip flop where I'm like, maybe I need to go on it, but I don't. I need to just sit with whatever it is that's bothering me.
Right.
When I went on medication, it's because I was having a health issue. Like, I would get so worked up that, like, my health was in question.
Right.
So.
Yeah, see, and you kind of led off with that a while ago when we started. But yeah, with my first therapist and with the therapist I've been now since I've been in New Jersey, they've never thought I was, and I don't mean this word with any judgment, but they don't think I was that far gone that I needed to be medicated.
That's good.
They just thought, my first therapist actually said, like, you're not obsessive compulsive, but you do compulsively obsess about things. And you
That's
need
a good one.
You need to dial that back. I'm like, okay, I get that. And I need to step back from that sometimes, because I will do that sometimes. I will look at things from all angles. I will try to find every kink in the hose so I can straighten it out. And it's like, you can't do that because you will drive yourself
that
crazy.
is a trauma response too.
Exactly, to pull yourself out of that. And so it's even getting better at realizing when I'm doing that and saying, like, okay, I need to refocus, or I need to reassess. And being able to self-assess is important. And that's one of the things I've had to learn. And little things like meditation. Like, I'm on a streak now. I'm at 300 and whatever. I've meditated every day.
I love that.
Since it was actually, I said I was going to start doing it.
What form of meditation do you do? Because there's so many.
I use a Headspace app.
Okay.
So, which has been great. So it's all guided meditation.
Okay.
Sometimes it's only 5 minutes a day, but usually I try to do 10 before bed. Sometimes I do 10 minutes twice a day.
Nice.
I've heard that Oprah does 2 20-minute meditations a day, and I'm like, I could be Oprah in 40 minutes a day. Hey, not a bad strategy. But yeah, at least once a day, usually for 10-ish minutes at the end of the day, just to calm down, because I had a habit for a while, and I'll even say this kind of came to the surface again during the pandemic with all the uncertainty and all the stress and all the anxiety surrounding all of that, where I'm not getting into bed to go to bed. I'm getting into bed and playing the greatest hits of all my stresses and all the bad memories and all that other stuff. So I'm not lying down to go to sleep. I'm lying down to think. And I had to, meditating every night is one of the things that helps to clear my head.
Yeah.
Just clear everything away so I can get into bed and just get comfortable. And also one of the things it does, aside from, checking in with your mind and kind of taking yourself out of your body, is at the end of it, when you're coming back into your body, then I'm able to get into bed. And yeah, maybe it sounds hokey, but truthfully, like, I'm able to say, like, oh, okay, I feel the soft sheets. I feel the soft pillow. And you're just that checked in with yourself that your thoughts aren't consuming you.
I like that.
And that has been extremely helpful for me in that I can get to bed, like literally climb into bed and fall asleep. Whereas there have been stages of my life where that was not possible. I mean, I even had anxiety, even though I didn't have the word for it. I wasn't calling it anxiety because, again, I just didn't know that's what it was.
Yeah.
in like 2010, in my late 20s.
We weren't taught about it.
No, it wasn't part of the conversation in general. Like I said, a lot of times therapy and stuff was played for a joke. And, I didn't know anybody. I mean, listen, aside from hitting bottom, one of the things that made me comfortable about getting into therapy was because for years I've been a big fan of Craig Ferguson, and obviously Howard Stern is at least a slight influence. But they both talked about being in therapy. I mean, Howard still goes to therapy 3 times a week. And just even having people I looked up to who were in therapy, I'm just like, oh, that, and it's not like a idolizing celebrities kind of thing or anything like that, but it's 2 people who I admire and who've achieved a lot in their career. They're very accomplished, performers. I was like, oh, they're doing it, so that helps make it okay.
Yeah.
And even the fact that I got into therapy has helped to make it more accessible to friends of mine. Just be like, oh, Chris is in therapy and it's helped. So it's interesting that even having a reference point for something like that is very helpful to people, which again is why I even like doing shows where we're actually talking about this stuff. And I'm not, I'm cool with getting into it because people hear this and they're just like, oh, okay, there's nothing wrong with medication. There's nothing wrong with getting into therapy.
Right.
There's
Whatever
nothing wrong
you
with
need
talking.
to do to help you.
And do it in stages. It's not like, you don't, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? It's that kind of thing where it's like, you don't just, I don't remember who said that, but I got that from somewhere. That's not mine. That's not, you can empathize with a serial killer. I'm pretty sure it sounds like me. I know I said it to you, but
oh God.
Anyway, cracking up over there. This is a very amusing, serious episode of the show, apparently.
Amusing, serious.
Yeah. It's like, this conversation's deep and hilarious. But yeah, it's a process. So it's not something like you need to know even going in. I mean, I didn't know. Again, when I started going into therapy, I knew the stuff I was going to get into because I knew I hadn't dealt with yet.
So you want to know something funny? So
Sure.
when I
Please. No, they're all about the funny.
It's
so
funny, but
please.
it's not funny because I guess the field that I'm in, I have so many people come in and out of my studio, my skincare studio.
You're like a bartender.
And
and the way people talk to you about stuff.
yeah,
or like a cab driver.
definitely.
Yeah.
So I just get these mini clips of what people are going through and I give them advice. So it's always therapeutic. Of course they're getting waxed, but like they love coming because they're like, oh my God, my therapy session. Okay.
Totally.
And they like kind of lay back and they just let everything go. And I ended up becoming everybody's therapist.
Yeah.
And unlicensed. And when I went
licensed esthetician.
I'm a
Did I say
licensed
it right?
esthetician.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not a licensed therapist. Amateur therapist.
So I think I'm going to go back to school.
Really?
It's time.
I mean...
So more for behavior because my background, I have to stop skipping stories, but
no, it's all right.
because of my
this show does not move in a straight line. Trust.
So because of my background, how I had to grow up, I had to observe behaviors to best avoid certain scenarios from happening to keep myself safe.
Right.
So that kind of translated into adulthood where I can watch somebody and, okay, this is how you act. Let me exit out the picture before it gets worse, before it gets dangerous. So that translated into adulthood. Of course, now I have a child on the spectrum, so I watch and I know when he's about to have a meltdown, change the behavior, change the atmosphere. So I'm going to go back to school to become a behavior analyst. It makes sense, and it's just, it's a natural gift that came from trauma, but I'm trying to make it into the positive note.
Exactly. No, you're breaking the cycle. You're turning it into something. You're spinning it into something positive. Yeah.
So when my clients would come in and they'll do all that, so I let them release. And I'm trying to get back to the point that therapy.
Yes.
So I'll become their therapist, and then when it was time for me to, I'm not always in therapy. It's just I don't have time in my schedule. I don't have the money for the extra because it was like $250 a fucking session.
Really?
Yeah, I had to pay out of pocket. $250 a session.
A lot of people pay out of pocket. Yeah. And that's another thing that unfortunately inhibits a lot of people from going the cost.
The funny thing was, I went when my friend was on hospice. I was not okay. We grew up together. When I tell you that was my sister, like she would come to my house. She would say, Ash, are you home? Yes. Okay, open up. She'll come into my house. We'll lay in bed, watch TV. Like that was my friend, And so when she was on hospice, I was not okay. Watching somebody kind of like wither away who they were, like that vibrant energy that they wore, and watching them wither away, she forgot who I was more towards the end. So it destroyed me. I went straight to therapy. I'm like, I'm not okay. And that first session, it was 3 hours of me just hysterically crying. And
purging.
Yeah, it was great. It was really good. And I remember after she died, I went back to therapy. Like I continued until she passed. And then it got to a point where the therapist started talking to me about her problems. And she paused in the middle of the therapy. She was like, well, hold on. She goes, wait, I have to stop our sessions. And I'm like, why? It's good. And she goes, no. She goes, I had the tools. I had the tools. I had, the self-awareness. I know how to sit with myself to observe. I acted like this. I did this. How can I fix it? We're living in the solution. So that's part of what they show you. It's a different perspective to look at the bigger picture, but live in the solution. And that's what I try to do. But I couldn't. I had so many emotions because my best friend was dying.
Right.
And that's why I went to her. And it turned into just kind of like a hangout with two people because I'll come in like, oh, hey, okay, this will happen. This is what, I knew I had trauma from my past, but I was dealing with most of it on my own. So she had to stop our session. She's like, I can't charge you for this. This is our last session. I'm like, no, I have problems. Like, what do you mean? Like, I have issues.
Wait.
Like, we got to talk
You're
about
done,
this.
but I'm not.
Yeah, I'm like, no. And she was like, what? I think she said ethically. She had to stop.
She was blurring the line. So she couldn't do it.
Yes, and gotcha. She told me that what I needed was a specialist on trauma, and she recommended. I'm gonna butcher it because I always mix up the letters. It's EDMR, no EMDR, eye movement it's a form of therapy. It's a form of
look it up.
Yeah, look it up.
Do some work yourselves. We're giving you pearls here, all right?
Yeah, but
Google it.
It's a form of a trauma therapy, like complex trauma therapy, where you talk about the trauma and your body is going through it. So there's a great book that I always recommend to everybody. It's called The Body Keeps the Score.
Ah, okay.
So you know how
Check
you
that
talk
out.
about how you're talking about something and you feel the emotions coming
Yeah,
up?
your nervous system.
Yeah, it's because
Yeah.
it remembers it. You're talking about it and your body is living that same experience
Yeah.
those many years ago, and you're doing the same thing over and over. So with the trauma therapy, it you talk about it, but you're moving. So they have kind of dance therapy where you're talking about it, but you're like moving your body, like you're shaking the trauma away. You know, it's
Ash, I
like
found it.
That's good. Oh, what is
great.
it? Okay.
Eye movement desensitization and reprocessing.
yes,
Got it. Was that on mic?
it is. That's why I was like,
Was that on mic, Christian? Did she get? Okay, just checking.
So
I don't wear headphones. They don't wear headphones for
It's-
bravery, so I want to fit in.
So it's so you talk about the trauma, but you have to move it out of your body. And it's a very spiritual experience too. Like you just
Right.
move it out of your body. And that's like how you're supposed to let it go.
Well,
'Cause
you're
sometimes
disrupting a
talking-
pattern too.
Yeah,
That's the other thing.
talking's not enough.
Because we all, when something gets, it's an overused word, but it's an appropriate word, triggered. When you're triggered,
Yeah.
your body and your nervous system and even your brain can start running a pattern.
Yeah.
And you need to interrupt the pattern so it doesn't play out. It's the same way, like you were saying, like behavioral. When you see if your son maybe it looks like he's starting to spin out, it's just like, okay, I need to interrupt this
Yeah.
so he doesn't spin out. And we need to be able to do that for ourselves. It's not easy,
It's not.
but you can kind of recognize the sign. Like that's why I've been able to, on a few occasions when I feel myself getting anxious, I'm able to kind of
Pause.
head off a panic attack.
Well, that's
and
practice
squash
the
it.
pause.
Yeah.
I'm learning, like, I'm trying to bring out all the therapy words that I learned. Practice the pause before you react. When somebody disrespects you, when somebody says some crazy stuff, you just have
Yeah.
to sit back and practice that pause because sometimes that saves you.
Yeah. Oh God, it's very easy to just react
Yeah.
and do something completely out of raw emotion as opposed to like considered emotion. It's not saying it all needs to be logical, but it's very easy to just like impulsively react to something emotionally. That's when you yell at somebody. That's when you say stuff
Yeah.
you regret. And we've all done it. So, but it's something that that's like a muscle too. Where it's, right, yeah, let me step back. Let me
Practice
weigh
that
this
pause.
out. Yeah,
And
practice
what's
the pause.
the solution? So that's
Right.
a lot of what I try to do. And it's why my marriage is so freaking strong. Because it's like, all right, pause. What's the solution? Because we're going to be talking in circles about what we don't agree on, and we're not going to agree on everything.
Of course.
So what's the solution? How can we come to even solution? Like, let's live in the solution and stop this debate.
Right. And that's really important too. The fact that you have somebody who actually gets it and who supports
Yeah,
you. And
I'm very. When I tell I understand, I am very fortunate.
yeah. No,
'Cause
that
he's
means a
played
lot.
a big part.
Yeah, it's and that's something. Frankly, it's overdue for me to talk about, but now seems like the appropriate conversation. That we're having. It seems like the right time to talk about it. But so for a long time, I never really put my personal life out there on social media or anything like that. I've kind of always and not just because I'm doing the show, because there was a couple of years, 2016 to 2020, there was no show going on. So it wasn't like I need to keep it all about my public image or something. It wasn't
Yeah.
about that. But I've always been protective of my personal life and my privacy. And in one area, it has been to my detriment. And that was, in my last relationship, which I never talked in detail about any of that stuff on the show. And I never really shared anything as far as on social media. So my former girlfriend, the long-suffering Sherry, who is the one person who had to deal with me at the bottom, who had to deal with all of the anxiety, the depression, had to talk me down a lot, and has had her own experiences that she was able to walk me through all of that and kind of be able to ground me in those difficult moments. Because it's a person, and again, this is why I'm pausing, because my mind is starting to, kind of play this stuff back, because it's not like I dwell on it. I don't think back to that. But when I do think about it, it does kind of take me back to this extremely low point, which was difficult to experience. I was depressed, seriously depressed in 2016 and 2017. And it was the hardest time of my life. I talked about a lot of it in Cape 187, which I recorded the week I turned 40, kind of reflecting on my 30s, because it was a really tough decade. The whole decade was difficult when I was in with a couple of exceptions, but that's when I was living in California, and a lot of what did and did not happen out there that, affected my psyche and my mental health. And the best way I can kind of describe it now is I kind of checked out of my body and I was just living in my head. So I was putting on weight. And yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. And I was just overanalyzing everything. I was incredibly insecure. I was depressed. I was anxious. It can be very isolating living out there too. And that's just not my experience. I've had enough conversations with people who've spent time out there or lived out there for a time and, also moved back to wherever and just said like, no, it can feel very isolating living out there. Because it's a crowded place, but you're very rarely authentically connected to anybody, which is just kind of the way it is out there in my experience and others' experiences. But anyway, she was an important part of the second phase of CAPE in 2015, the Skid Row Studios era. And even after that studio closed, and then I was doing the show from home for a little while. And actually one of the reasons why I stopped doing the show in it was August of 2016. I think it went to 100 episodes and then took a hiatus because I didn't know what I was going to do next. But part of it was her and I were doing a lot of shows together. And even though they were fun stories and things, we're talking about movies we'd seen or like concerts we gone out to where like stuff happened and there were things to talk about. But I thought, wow, I do not want my podcast to turn into, because her and I were clearly moving in a direction. And I said, I don't want my podcast to become, here's me and my girlfriend talk about the stuff we do together. So I was like, I don't want to do that because there are a lot of like couples podcasts and stuff like that. I was like, that is not what I want to do. And I hit 100 episodes and I was just like, I'm going to stop and reassess because I don't know what I'm doing next. Fast forward to March of 2020 and we're in lockdown and I'm like, I need to do this. Otherwise my brain's going to eat itself. Anyway, I've never when we did a couple episodes in quarantine, we did a few episodes together in 2020 and never addressed, the fact that we split up or anything like that. And one of the things that was really difficult for her was, and this is why I'd like to ask you because you're very, you have a great marriage and you are, private to a degree about your marriage, but at the same time you share your husband and your kids on social media and all of that, which is something I've always had a mixed relationship with in as much as I know because she told me and I was aware of it at the time, but I know it was hurtful to her that here I am thanking everybody who's involved in this, and particularly when, 3 years ago started coming to a shared universe. And it's just like everyone's been such a big part of the show. And thank you to Ming and Mike and Chris and Christian and, everybody who's been part of this and my friends who've been supporting it, blah, blah, blah. And meanwhile, she's the one I'm going home to. She's the one who's actually supporting me. She's the one who's dealt with me at my worst. And I'm not publicly acknowledging her because, well, that's my relationship. That's not for public consumption. I'm not saying it was the right thing to do. I understand why I felt and frankly feel the way I do about keeping my intimate relationships, off the radar. But, and frankly, I'm not saying it's something that I would do differently if I could go back and do it differently because I do have mixed feelings about that because I'm not one of those, I have a strange relationship with social media anyway, and that I hate, I feel like it's, performative posts for, like birthdays and anniversaries. It's just like happy anniversary to the person who makes me complete, to my better half. I'm like, this person.
That's me.
Oh, no, I know. Well, that's the thing. Like I'm very, very cynical. So it's not that I hate it, but I'm just like, you talk to this person, you live with this person. You're posting it for everybody else's sake. Like,
yeah,
and
this is true.
And no, it is. But at the same time, I understand the point of being able to publicly show your love and affection for somebody. That is important too, because you also don't want somebody to keep you secret either. And I don't know that I ever handled that in the right way. And for somebody who dealt with me, and I'm using that word for with all its implications, because I'm not an easy person to deal with. You all get me in small doses. Imagine living with me day in and day out. It's a lot. I'm a lot, and I know it. In a lot of ways.
We're all somebody's cup of tea or tequila, okay?
I'm not everybody's cup of tea, but I will be the right person's shot of whiskey. Not everybody drinks tea. I'm fine with that. Okay. But it's, you write that one down, Christian? Is that good too? All right. That's going on a shirt. Cape merch coming soon, everybody. Follow on the socials, CAPEPOD. Anyway, I ultimately feel bad that I haven't publicly given her credit for being there in the way that she has. And I understand her at different times telling me, like, listen, you've been so openly thankful to everybody else and grateful to everybody else who's participated, but not with me, who has been here, who has, not that she felt like I owed her because she helped me through my worst and all of that stuff. She felt left out. But that's exactly it. And I get why, but at the same time, I don't know how to balance that with my feelings of, well, I don't want to be public about our relationship. Now, granted, our relationship ended for various reasons. It wasn't because of that. But that's something that I still feel some feelings about, in as much as I've never publicly thanked her or acknowledged her. I'm doing so now, basically, but it's overdue, and I don't know how, because she's still one of my, even though, we haven't been together for a while, but she's still one of my biggest supporters. And, I'm grateful to have had her come into my life at all, especially during that period of time, because I literally don't know what would have happened had she not come along, because I had somebody who could help me through all of that, who had, her own dealings with anxiety and things like that, where it was, with it being brand new to me, I didn't know how I was going to handle all of that. But I struggle with the idea of, well, how do, in retrospect, not that there's anything, I'm not keeping anybody's secret now or anything, but the idea of publicly acknowledging somebody, but at the same time trying to keep, my private life private in a way. Is that something that you have a perspective on, or something you've struggled with when it comes to, obviously you're married, I'm not saying, well, marriage ranks above everything else.
No.
But at the same time, as someone who's very open, like, is that something that you felt like you're okay with? Because even in recent years, that social media has become such a fixture in everybody's lives. It's like, it's all this data saying like, well, couples who don't share each other on social media are, 60% happier than couples who do, or something like that.
I feel like it's a fine line, because it's to each its own. If you want to share, you can share. If you don't want to share. So Jacob and I have had a conversation. I'm like, you don't post me. And he's like, well, it's my business page. He was like, I'm not posting you and the children on my business page. So there are times where I'll put like a reel up and then I'll tag him or collaborate with him. And that's as far as it goes. But it's just going home to him. I know that I don't need any more recognition for the real world. Not the real world, social media.
Right. Well, two different things.
That's two different things.
And that's also another thing I've said too. I'm just like, but it's social media. It's not real.
Media.
So I also kind of have
been
dismissive about it.
I do understand like the feeling left out in a creative way. Like if you know what I mean? Like if she took a chunk of what helped your creativity and what moved the show along, then yes, you give people their flowers when it's due, Yeah. And you don't have to do it where it's like my girlfriend so-and-so. You could just add that to the list.
Right. Well, and that's it. I know
like it's just, you don't have to describe who, what, when, where, why.
Right.
Well, I get it. It's tricky.
It is.
It's tricky. It's tricky because I used to love sharing my children's pictures, and it got to a point where I'm like, I don't want to.
Yeah.
I don't want to. So I see both sides.
Yeah, and that's been part of it for me, where I didn't know, while we were together, I didn't know how to deal with it, and to be able to acknowledge. That's I didn't feel compelled to publicly acknowledge, our breakup or anything like that. That just didn't.
That's nobody's business.
Exactly. Like, so there was no part of me.
That's when like people want to hawk in and like, oh, so what happened? Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Then they get their information and skedaddle.
Exactly. Well, and that's it too. And even the idea of just like, I'm not one of these guys getting out here. It's like my ex, blah, 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 blah. Like that's not my shtick. There are plenty of people who do that. People build careers off of who they've, been with or shit talking exes and stuff like that. And I'm not interested in doing that. I don't talk negatively about any of my exes.
Me too.
And I don't talk about them publicly either.
I'm friends with some. My husband too. He's friends with some of my exes. It's cool. I think that's healthy. Kinda.
Well, that's been one of the things with us is like navigating this friendship that we have post-relationship, because she genuinely is one of my favorite people.
Yeah.
And just the fact that our relationship didn't work out in the end is, which even that being on the same page as far as that even being the right thing, took a while and took a lot of conversations and all of that. But it's something I feel guilty about on different levels, in as much as I don't know kind of how to reconcile that. And it's something that, and I'm putting it out there because it is, first of all, overdue to give her the acknowledgement that she deserves. Well, that's what I'm doing. Is that Sherry, thank you for being so important to me and standing by me and being still one of my biggest supporters and dealing with all shades of me, including my, the lowest parts of me, which is it. She literally is the one person who's seen me at my worst. And it's a debt of gratitude I can never repay, which is something, I've had to struggle with the guilt of that. We're just like, well, how do I make it up to this person? Well, that doesn't mean you go against what feels right to you, or that doesn't mean like, well, if the relationship isn't working, we should stick it out because I owe this person kind of thing. It wasn't like that. And it's something it's something I don't know if I got, hypothetically, if I ended up in a serious relationship like next week, or, somebody like, I still wouldn't know exactly how to navigate that. I mean, it's never going to be equal to to the past and to
Right.
the role somebody played over a period of years. But I still don't know how it would be about that if a significant relationship came along and how I would treat that with social media, because I still feel like, no, that's my business. That's not for everybody else.
Yeah.
But
I think that's fine.
yeah, but the being left out and the not being able to give credit is like that is something I've struggled with, and I don't know how to handle, because I do that's one of those things I'm of two minds about. I'm like, well, of course I want to give you credit, but ultimately, and she came out to the premiere of The Out, our short film, and it was great to have her there, and it was one of those things where, well, she has said, like, I feel like you haven't. I haven't gotten credit for the show and for, being supportive of you when it comes to, all these things you've done over the last few years, and you've acknowledged everybody else. I was like, yeah, but, and I did tell her this, privately, but just for the sake of also putting it out there, just as a bit of a mea culpa, I guess, far be it for me to use a religious reference. But it's, I said, the fact that you've been there for me on a human level, none of this creative stuff would have come out of me had that not happened. So I said, you're honestly in a class of your own when it comes to that.
Right.
Because I would not have been of sound mind even to have done anything with the show in the last 3.5 years, or to have made a short film, or to any of the things that I've done creatively that, yes, maybe I've thanked my friends for, my collaborators and all of that. None of that would have happened if you weren't there for me as a person, which again is why I'm putting this out there now, because she deserves the credit for it. But it's something that I've honestly struggled with, because I don't want her to feel left out, and I don't want her to feel like not acknowledged in a public way. But at the same time, it's something, it's not like we're putting my relationships out there publicly and being just like,
I get it.
and thanks to
I
because she made this.
I think I think there's a way to go about it where you don't have to describe who the person is to you.
Right.
It's just another thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you have to forgive yourself too. There's so much guilt there.
Yeah, there is a lot.
That's something that you have to forgive. We're human. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to stumble, catch yourself, and just keep going,
Right. Well, and it's also, we can, when it comes to forgiveness, it's funny you mentioned that, because I've had to forgive myself a lot of times for things I've said and done, even the wrong things, because you have to forgive yourself for doing the best you could do at the time.
Yeah.
Because that's what you were capable of. And that's another thing we kind of, a lot of us beat ourselves up over the way we've handled things before, but it's like, well, that was all I had. I'm not saying it was right, but that was
Right.
the best I could do at that time, and I need to be okay with that. It's like I can't keep looking at it through, well, now I would handle that differently. Right, and you will, because you're better than you were back
Right.
then. You've evolved, you've improved. This version of you is different than previous versions of you. So that is an area where it's just like, I need to forgive myself for not being better about things or not knowing how to handle things in the past. But I was just, getting very, very skeptical when it comes to social
You
media.
want us to
and all
keep
that
your
stuff.
private life private, and that's
Yeah.
fine. I think a lot of us need to be I need to be a little bit more private. I'm so transparent. It's been used against me where it's just like being private. It's not. I think it's a good thing.
Well, and that's
know?
it. But I get the idea of feeling you deserve to be acknowledged publicly,
Yeah.
And I get the people who want to praise their partners, in a public way, because there is still something. There is an amount of pride that comes with, like, this is my person. This is the person who I'm with. This is the person I'm committed to, and all of that. There is something to be said for that. So I don't have anything against that, of course.
Yeah.
But just for me, I've never felt compelled to do that, because social media and all this stuff, it's still kind of in its infancy. We're the guinea pigs for all of this stuff, Who would have known 10 years ago that, like, Instagram would be such a prevalent part of our daily lives and, all that stuff, and just how social media was going to play out, period.
We're older than Google. So we're the guinea pigs for everything.
I heard
social
about
media, internet,
Yeah.
dial up.
I still remember the first time I heard about Google. It was in community college, my first semester of community college in 2001.
I was in 5th grade.
Oh, my God.
I think.
It's probably the same year. What's the matter with you? Okay, we're not going to ask Sally. That's fine. Oh, yeah, you're here. Forgot. Follow Mind Minx on
Man.
Instagram. She was probably going live. You could watch this like a week and a half before it's going out. I'm just kidding. Listen, we got to break it up a little bit. I'm here airing out my guilt and trying to acknowledge,
Where the guilt comes from
is what, making fun of you? Being a smartass. Yeah, I'm taking it out on all of you. But anyway, now when it comes to therapy, it is one of those things where, again, people hesitate for a lot of reasons. I have lucked out with my therapist because they've both been great, but I know people hesitate because, finding good therapists is like dating almost. It's like you may need to go for some. And I know people have been put off from therapy because of bad experiences with bad therapists. And look, they're bad therapists. They're bad dentists. They're people who are not that good at what they do. Plenty of people. So I understand the trepidation when it comes to like, oh, no, I tried therapy and this person was like, blah, blah, blah. And I hate that that's put some people off of therapy. I know people who've sought help, and just had somebody who was not helpful at all, But now I've done it through traditional means through my insurance, excuse me, with finding my therapists. But I don't know if there are any resources you'd like to recommend. People seem to have a lot of luck with BetterHelp.
Yeah, I was about to say, I know online there's BetterHelp. I know that, I don't know. I have I ask my clients.
Yeah.
I have so many women come in and out, and it's just like if the subject comes up and they recommend somebody, all right, I'll give it a try.
Of course, personal referral,
so
that helps too.
I like referrals. I know one of my friends, he's going through BetterHelp.
Yeah.
And he likes it. He's on his 5th therapist, but again, it's it's a trial and error.
It is a bit. Well, that's
and even so okay. So my thing is, I don't, for whatever reason, every time I have any kind of like really deep conversations, I'm always the one. Not saying that this is,
we're drifting in and out of deep conversation.
I'm always the one that I sit and I listen and I nod, and then I kind of like start pulling things out of them. And it's happened with therapists. So I found my own ways to cope, and I call it my superpower. My superpower is I read every day. So I make sure that on social media I follow therapists, where they throw like some great information out there on how to cope with certain types of trauma. I follow more self-aware kind of posts. So I'm not scrolling through just random people posting whatever they want to post. I make sure it's intentional. And I journal. Like when I feel stuck, I have to remove myself from my family, from everybody. I like to sit out in nature because that's where I can ground myself.
Yeah.
I'll either journal, I'll pray, I'll cry, whatever it is that I need at that moment. And that's my therapy, and then when I feel like I need to talk to somebody, I'll pick a friend. But sometimes that's backfired.
It depends. If you keep turning to the same friend and
no, it's backfired.
You vent to them, that can be because now you're setting up a dynamic.
It backfired.
So I get,
It's the one time that I was just like, I need to vent. I called. Well, some of my friends are psychiatrists.
Oh, well.
But my psychiatrist friend wasn't picking up her phone. So I'm like, all right, let me call somebody else real quick. I just want to cry about this real fast. And I was venting to somebody who turned around and just started talking about herself. And I'm just like,
hey,
this is about me. The fuck? Like, I was like, all right. And I'm just listening. And I'm just like I want to complain about my kids.
Right.
And then it just turned into.
Was it one-upping? Like, you think your kids are
it
bad?
Wasn't
my
even,
kids
no,
are.
It was one of those where I'm talking about my son. And it's like, oh, yeah, well, with my child, I had that scare. And I'm like.
Oh, it's like that.
Or I had somebody compare ADHD to autism. And her and I aren't friends. And it was one of those where I was saying something and how we have to put more attention on this child. And she was like, well, my daughter has this and that's like, and I was just like, who the fuck? Like, I was so angry. Like, how are you going to compare my child to your child? Who's like 15 years old and perfectly fine, in society standards.
Right.
Where I can't even go to a grocery store without my son having a whole meltdown. I was so angry. And I'm like, you know what? You just can't vent to everybody. You can't talk to just anybody. That doesn't, they just don't know. So I just learned how to stay quiet and journal and keep it to myself. I'll talk to my husband. I'll pick a reliable friend.
Yeah.
A reliable friend. And just kind of try to vent.
Cool. Well, look, but that's helpful. It's like seeking people out. I agree with that. There are a lot of people I follow on social media and who do podcasts as well.
I feel like journaling has helped me a lot.
Journaling and meditation. I do both before bed, and they're helpful.
I don't journal all the time.
I don't
Because
journal
it gets
every
so
day.
deep sometimes. Like whenever somebody starts to journal, I always go to the first one where it's like write a letter to your 8-year-old self, and that gets so deep because it's like, man,
I haven't done those. I've done the write letters and not send them to people. I've written letters to people in my journals to when I feel like I have something. Or
If
when
they're
someone keeps
hate
coming
letters,
up on
those
my
are good
mind.
to burn.
Yeah,
burn
and that's
it.
one of those things where it's like, well, sometimes it's also like anger, and then it's like, but then the empathy part kicks in where it's just like, I wish you well, and I hope you blah, blah, blah. So even it's therapeutic in that sense sometimes where I've been like, this was wrong, and the way you did this was wrong, or all of that, just to get it out of me. And again, to clear those things out before I go to bed too, just so that way they're not lingering, and so I'm, my head's not on the pillow, with all the wheels turning. So yeah, journaling, meditation, therapy. I mean, just for a long time, it was just knowing I had that 1 hour a week, that safe hour where I could talk about whatever was going on, or I could unload if need be, or I can just like get a perspective of just like, this keeps coming up in my head and I'm not exactly sure how to sort this out.
So I put my daughter in therapy.
Really?
I think it's important. I think all of us need something.
Mm-hmm.
So she's hitting the hormonal changes.
Yeah, she's coming up on adolescence. So. For your sake, put her in therapy. No.
And I had to.
I mean,
because she reminds me so much of myself.
Oh,
and there was one time she was like, Mom, she goes, I get so angry and I feel the heat just kind of rise up. And I was like, all right, hold on.
Oh, I know where that comes from.
Wait. And I'm just like, all right. So I had to, check for resources. And, I put her in where a therapist comes to the house. And through therapy, she has learned how to properly describe her feelings, how to move forward, and how to solve whatever issue. And she's 10.
Yeah.
And
that's amazing.
It's amazing. I was floored.
What incredible tools to have as a 10-year-old.
Yeah.
Though.
So I do recommend, even don't wait till you have a problem. Just, use it as a tool to help you learn how to properly speak about yourself, and to solve certain issues that you may have with people too. And we had an incident in school where she sat down and she looked at her teacher. She said, I felt embarrassed when you did this. And even just that sentence, for a child to say that, I'm just like, okay, I'm doing something right. It's like she was able to tell an adult. Usually children are afraid of speaking their emotions. So I'm such a huge advocate for therapy. Huge.
Totally. Oh, listen, only in the last 2.5 years have I been able to have, I don't want to say difficult conversations, and I feel weird because my parents were just on the show, but just being able to talk about things where I would have been reluctant to just don't say anything about that. Try not to upset anybody kind of thing. Well, don't bring that up. But then at the same time, letting them know okay, so this was not how I expect, or not to revisit old arguments or drudge up things from the past. Because there are a couple things I've laughed about from the past that they legitimately don't remember. That this is kind of benign. I'm going to put it out there. I wouldn't do it when they were here because they were both very upset. When I was a kid, and I was not a problem child at all, and I don't remember the context. And frankly, my sister doesn't remember either. But she has an elephantine-like memory, so she doesn't remember it. It probably was never anything that serious. But not repeatedly, but several times, my parents talked about sending me to military school. I mean, it's not like we ever they never brought me in somewhere and I interviewed. It wasn't like AJ Soprano kind of thing to bring it back to that, where it's just no, you're going to go to this place. It never felt like it was serious, but they said it several times when I was a kid. And I don't know, I don't feel like it was warranted. I don't feel like I was that bad of a kid. And I made a joke about it sometime in 2020, sometime this year, I made a reference to it. And they were both like, we never said that. I'm like, yes, you did. You both said it a bunch of times. I texted my sister. I was like, do you remember Mom and Dad mentioning about it? But I was laughing it off. It may have been because they rewatched Sopranos. I was watching it for the first time. That may have been the context and how it came up. And saying oh, you were going to send me to military. You talking about sending me to middle school. They had no recollection of it. And it really bothered them. It made my mother cry thinking about that. I can't believe we said that to you. And I was just like, no, I'm fine. It did not, it didn't traumatize me because it wasn't it didn't feel like a real threat, but it was something that was said, just we're going to send you to military school. Why? Even as a kid, I kind of didn't know why, because again, I wasn't a problem child. Yeah, I was not. I was an honor student and all that. I wasn't a behavior problem. I wasn't in detention, every week. But it was
they call me rebel without a cause.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's bad. My other family members call me Badass Ashley. Everything that was negative, that was my nickname. Oops.
Wow. That's funny. I mean, it's not, but now it's funny.
Now it's funny.
Yeah. But yeah, bringing up something like that, that was not meant to be a serious conversation. But like I had to tell them, like, listen, this is not something I carry with me. This is not something that I look at as trauma. This is not whatever. But like they were really bothered by it because they just did not remember that at all. So, but even just conversations about like when they respond to certain things and it hits me a certain way, just to be able to say like, there was, see, again, I don't want to necessarily get into personal stuff, but there was one thing when I spoke to them about something that was going on personally, and their response was their first question was about like how that's going to work out financially. Okay. And it was like a week or two later when I saw them, I had to actually tell them like, and this is 2 years ago, it's 2021, so I'm 39, 40, and to be able to tell them like, it bothered me that the first thing the two of you brought up was money as opposed to asking how I'm doing. I was like, that did bother me. And that's that kind of conversation. Like I couldn't have talked about something like that with them previously. And it wasn't a matter of like, let me bring this up to put them in their place, or let me bring this up to like, because I need to voice my feelings, right? It wasn't about that. It was just to kind of let them know like, hey, you responded in this way, and yet it upset me. But at the same time, I don't think you meant it that way. And, I think it made them kind of take a step. Not that it was, people are going to receive it how they're going to receive it, but I think it made them kind of step back and kind of look at like, oh yeah, that's not what's most important is what's going on. What's most important is our son's well-being and not, how this is going to financially affect things. And just be able to have a conversation like that. I mean, it took until, almost 40 to just be able to, bring up something like that, which is important because those are the kinds of conversations we would avoid with somebody. Oh, I don't want to upset them, or I don't want to bring this up, or I don't know how to talk about this with so-and-so. And it's something that, had to be learned. But now I'm at the point where if there is an area of discomfort, and there really isn't. I have a great relationship with my parents. I'm very lucky in that way. But I feel like I can talk to them and just have it, just that is a relief, just knowing like that communication is solid.
That's great.
And knowing that I can speak to them. But again, that's something that's come through time, that's been working through all this other stuff. That's learning how to communicate with people in general, but also another thing I've learned through therapy is like meeting people where they are. It's like, okay,
or accepting them where they are and leaving.
Well, that's it. Because there's only so much we can do. Like, why can't they respond? The way you respond to something? Why can't they think about this? Oh, the way you think about something? We all kind of do that to people.
Yeah, not everybody's ready to look within and
no. And some people are not going to change. And look, I don't expect this is, again, not a commentary on my parents, but they're 77 and 82. I'm not expecting them to change. A lot of that concrete's been dry for a long time. So I
their
wouldn't
foundation
expect them,
is set.
Totally. So like I'm not expecting them to turn a corner necessarily at this stage of life, and that's fine. But to be able to recognize where they are and the people they are, and I'm just using them as an example because everybody has people have complicated relationships with their parents.
My friend that is a psychiatrist, she has said it where it's like it's up to you whether if you want to accept your parent as they are, who they are, great.
Totally.
But you don't have to.
Right.
Because I have that issue. Where it's like I don't have a good relationship. Do I talk to my dad all the time? Yes. We didn't start a relationship till I was 18, 19 years old. So that's a chunk missing. My mother, we work on it from time to time, but I have a huge mother wound that I'm still working on, and I work on it through my daughter. I'm not trying to repair my relationship with my mother because it is what it is. You're not changing.
Right. But you're trying to break the chain.
I'm breaking that with my child, with my children. And it's when you want to talk about difficult, it's difficult. And then when the holidays come in, like I want us to sit because we have a huge family. With my mom and my dad, I'm one of 4 sisters, and then my father has 2 other children outside of this. So we're a huge family, and I always want like that blended. Come to my house, let's all sit around.
Totally.
Is there gonna be drama? Of course, but we have like that bad, negative. You leave and you're crying. Kind of drama, and then my last, like it was my birthday. I think that was the last year where I was just like, I'm going away to celebrate because I left and I was crying. My 30th birthday, I left. I remember my husband's driving home and I'm leaning against him just crying. And he was like, "What's wrong, Mom?" So I was like, "I'm done. I'm done." So sometimes you have to just leave them where they're at.
Right.
Go within and fix yourself, fix your family, make sure all that's good because people they were born in a different generation.
That's another thing too.
They think that I was always told, "Oh, you're gonna go to therapy, you're gonna go to the cuckoo house."
Right. Yeah,
like,
exactly.
That was always a response. And she even in an argument, it's you need therapy. And I'm like, yeah, I know, you too. So you're not going to use that against me.
But it's not a negative thing. See, when people use
People
that
like
as like
to
a
use
put
it
down,
as- yep.
totally, and it's not either. That's one of the things that's like there's still the stigma,
Mm-hmm.
which there's no reason to have any kind of stigma to it, which again is funny, joke in The Sopranos kind of where it starts. What happened to strong silent type like Gary Cooper? And that's exactly what it is. Once upon a time, there was that, like men are stoic and don't discuss their feelings and blah, blah. And look, you don't need to talk about it on your silly little podcast or anything like that if you don't want to. But the idea of dealing with your stuff and, making sure your mud doesn't splash on other people, yeah, that is your responsibility. That is up to everybody individually because we all have it and it's fine. Nobody comes into this world knowing how to deal with trauma or abuse or all the different things we go through. Addiction, there's so many different areas of life that nobody knows necessarily how to deal with, which is why it honestly was my thought when you were talking about your friend going in hospice, just like, yeah, people don't know, you don't inherently know how to deal with that.
Yeah.
You have to find a way to deal with it. If it means going and crying to a therapist for 3 hours and that gives you some relief, cool.
Yeah.
Great. That's the idea. It's like you're not going to know how to process that. So if it requires a 3-hour session
And I
to cry it
couldn't
out.
process it with my friend because she didn't know who I was. So
Right.
the therapist did give me the tools that's when she told me to meditate. And she was, it was great advice. And for those who aren't really spiritual, they're not going to understand too much about it. But she said it in a way where it's like the physical body, you don't have to hold her hand and, speak to her. She said, meditate.
Yeah.
Let your spirits connect. She said, just meditate and speak to her in that way and just, let go whatever you have to let go, whatever. It's just, it was just great to have somebody direct me into whatever was going to help me best at that time.
Right. Right. Because who's to know? We don't know. People don't know
Yeah.
how to deal with these things, which is it's part of the ongoing conversation that, again, people are hopefully having right now. People are listening. Hopefully this helped. We're not
Yeah.
we're just talking about our experiences, but the idea isn't like zero in on like, well, this isn't my specific situation, blah, blah, blah. The one thing I will say that I've heard this from a lot of people, and this is something that I do resist when people say like, music is my therapy. Like, no, it's not. Music is therapeutic. Music is extremely helpful. Listen, I have songs I listen to when I'm sad. I have my heartbreak playlist when I've gone through that. Like, I have that. Music is absolutely therapeutic. It's not therapy. It doesn't address what's going on with you. It doesn't help you heal your wounds and get specifically at what's going on with you. So I do refute that. It's therapeutic. Absolutely. Music can affect your mood and help to get you through something, but it's not going to help you address what's actually going on. It's not going to help you look under the hood and answer questions about yourself. Like doing something specific for yourself, whether it's journaling or meditation or therapy. Those things, those are forms of therapy, but music is one of those things where it's just like, I'm not putting it down because music is, the root of so much of my creativity and has helped me through so many different things, but it hasn't healed anything within me. That has required work on my part. It's not listening to something someone else wrote that I connect with or that resonates with me or that I'm able to pull up and listen to when I feel a certain way. No, you actually need to address what's going on with you. So I do resist when people are like, music's my therapy. It's one of those things that a lot of people said to me.
Admit to say I am not okay.
Yeah, please. It's fine.
Well, it's funny. I did that to a friend. She's like, how are you? I'm like, I'm not okay. She's like, what does that mean? Did you want me to lie to you? I'm not okay. I'm struggling. Exactly. Oh, okay. I'm like,
yeah.
Okay. I think it was hysterical. I'm like, I'm not okay.
Right. No, that's it. We've called each other at an event. I mean, that's fine because it's just like.
Yeah, it's funny when I'll text you, hey.
Yeah, hey.
Can you
You
talk?
have time to talk? I'm like, yes.
2
sure.
hours
Or like
later.
Yeah, it's totally. I cue the SpongeBob meme, and it is. It's just like, well, that felt good. But even that is fine because it's like,
Event sesh.
Right.
I love vent sessions.
Well, it is helpful. And at
It's
the same
helpful.
time, then you're not carrying it around
I
with
think
you.
sometimes you just have to hear yourself talk about it so that you could learn
Totally.
what's the problem and where,
And it's talking to somebody who's not judging you for it either.
Yeah.
Because just being like, listen, I'm not, I said something to Sally recently that I was just like, I know it's unhealthy. I know this is
I know it's unhealthy.
Yeah, like, I know this is the unevolved part of me speaking, but I really hope, ... Yeah, in talking about somebody else.
Don't you love
And
that
I'm
we
like,
both call
that's
Sally
not-
where it's like, listen, I know this is not okay,
Well,
but can I be
that's-
mean for a second?
But that's part of showing up for people in a real way as a friend. Like that is one of the
a
things you do. Where it's
non-judgmental
just,
friend.
totally, it's just like, listen, this is we're helping each other through this, and we're all. It helps that we're open about our struggles or our weaknesses and all of that because it's just like
how
we're
else
all
is
human.
anybody else going to open up if you don't do it too?
Totally.
So it's like you have a safe space here.
Exactly. So the big ones I'm going to recommend to anybody at wherever you're at, but the big things that help with me, definitely therapy, one-on-one therapy with whatever means works for you, time-wise, financially, in person, virtually, whatever. I recommend it because, again, and I said this to a friend who recently started therapy, it's just like, you don't know what you're going to find when you open the hood. But
and you
dealing
want
with
somebody
it-
to direct you and help you out with getting all
Exactly.
those parts together.
Yeah, so I said, give yourself time. It's not going to happen overnight. I
Yeah.
used the shower analogy. Take a shower once, you clean forever. But I said, dealing with it is better, like what I said earlier about waking up every day in the mud is different than waking up every day and cleaning off the mud. You're better working on it than just not working on it at all. So give yourself the time to figure things out with a therapist through some means of therapy. Journaling, meditation, huge for me. I use the Headspace app for meditation. I recommend it for anybody. I'm pretty sure anybody gets like a 30-day
I think there's
free
another
trial.
one called mindfulness.
There's a bunch of them now. I know a bunch of
Yeah.
people use the Calm app who get a lot out of that. I got into Headspace because they used to sponsor Penn Jillette's podcast, and he was using it personally. And I was just like, oh, it was good enough for him. He's wacky too. So let me try what he's using.
So I used to go on YouTube to watch a 5-minute guided meditation.
Yeah, there are a bunch of them. Yeah, you can check them out on
And
YouTube,
some,
of course.
my meditation is reading before bed.
Yeah,
But
see,
I
that-
love
that-
to read. It's just
That's self-care. That's a form of
I
self-care.
read too much, but it's a good bad habit to have
Yeah.
because I'm enriching my
A lot of times
enriching.
I will read
Can you say it for me? I'm stuck. Enriching.
enriching your brain.
Am I? Is it?
Sure.
I feel like I'm getting stuck. You know how your tongue gets stuck on the hood of your mouth? I'm like, why can I say this? But yeah, it's an enrichment.
There's peanut butter on the roof of her mouth. You can't say enriching. That's what's happening.
So yeah, that's that.
I do that. Well, see,
But-
when I read, I try not to read anything too deep, but I'll try to put something good in my head. Like one of the books I keep beside my bed that I'll read like 1 or 2 chapters of As a Man Thinketh, because just putting good stuff in my brain before,
okay.
like nothing too deep, nothing that's like
So I can't read things that are too
therapeutic.
deep because
right, because then your brain will get started.
yeah,
and
so
I can't do
I
that
read
either.
like the superficial kind of not love stories, but fantasy
Oh, well, that's good
kind
too,
of thing.
because escapism, and that's
Yeah,
fine. Like
that's-
do that before you go to bed. Like that's healthy too. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that. I don't read enough fiction. I probably should, honestly, because it's just better as a writer. It's just
Yeah.
healthy. So those are my big things that I recommend. As far as people to follow, I get a lot out of
Dr.
podcasts.
Nicole, hold on.
Oh yeah, no,
I'm
there's
gearing up.
Oh, I was going to say
Instagram.
mine and then throw yours.
Where's my Instagram?
Yeah, pull yours up. I'll rattle mine off
Go
real
ahead.
quick. Podcasts, Mel Robbins podcast, School of Greatness with Lewis Howes, Unfuck Yourself with Gary John Bishop.
That's a great one.
Yeah, I love him. The Scottish accent just makes everything better, especially the curses, if we're being honest. Sorry, no, Miss Jillian Turecki is excellent. Jillian on Love's an excellent podcast for relationships and heartbreak and all that stuff on all levels, which has been very, very helpful. Those are the big ones. I follow them all on social media. And again, the BetterHelp app, I haven't used it, but I've heard great things about it. So if you're trying to get in on the ground floor of therapy and you want to go through that, that's cool. I've heard it's painless with like switching therapists. If you don't match up with somebody, they will match you with somebody better.
Yeah.
There's no awkward conversation or anything like that. They will just redirect you towards someone who can better suit your needs. And meditation therapy, journaling, I recommend all of those as just healthy practices. Who should they follow?
Okay, so if you want to just scroll through Instagram and just get little bits of knowledge here and there, I will always recommend Dr. Nicole LaPera.
Yes.
Her Instagram tag is holistic psychologist. She's phenomenal because she has these tips where she will reenact something, and just kind of label what this is, how to stop it, and there's always a solution in her videos. And I just want to see the mutual because I follow her. She has like a circle of people where they've done webinars.
Oh, nice.
And I'll watch the webinar and it's amazing.
I keep seeing your stuff on Twix, as we now call it. I see a lot of you've retweeted a couple of things.
Oh, I
people
see
I follow.
Twitter.
Yeah, well, I know that. I wish it was still Twitter. Unfortunately, it's not.
So
it's
there's
Twix.
another one. His name is Matthias J. Barker. So as soon as you follow one, everybody else will kind of just
Yeah, that's all it's going to be in your feed.
it'll start popping up. But it's great. It's great to open your phone and not see something negative. It's always a positive, and I think that's what we need to focus on.
Totally.
Like our filter, to our
yeah.
brain. It's like you need to see more positive if you expect to live a positive life. You continue opening your phone and seeing like fights and
Oh God,
the
yeah,
news
or
and
gossip
just-
and all that.
yeah,
it's just like
it-
I don't need to see every post the Daily Loud puts up every
Yeah.
6 minutes. Like I don't need gossip.
I
like
always-
put something good in my face.
Yeah.
Honestly, clean up your feed. I mean, that's another overall suggestion. You know,
you lost that
It's like-
one.
no, I know exactly what I said. Trust me. That'll be in my birthday reel for
What?
next year.
No. He said put something good
Put something good in my face.
And
Hey,
I said, see there.
listen. No, I'm kidding. Some
But
people
I
watching will
do
understand what I
think
just did.
following quality content
Totally.
on social media makes a big difference
Huge
because
difference, yeah.
you're forced to look at something and just think like, oh, okay,
Mhm.
that's a good piece of advice.
Yeah. And it's good just to put good stuff in your brain as well. That's another thing I do that I recommend if you can is, I mean, now the weather's getting colder here, so I'll probably be doing less of it. But I'll just listen to audiobooks. I'll put my headphones on and I'll go for a walk for about an hour.
That's great.
And that's one of the ways I wind down. When I get back inside, there's no TV, no snacking, like none of that. I'll usually do that later at night.
So I don't watch TV, and I think that plays a big part in me being able to sit with myself. I
Yes.
don't watch TV.
Yeah, because getting distracted is look. These distract us like crazy all day
Yeah.
long. You know, just
So
carrying
I
around
would
with us.
limit the
So-
distractions.
Yeah, and it's again, everybody has their coping mechanisms. Everybody has their distractions. Everybody has their ways they don't want to deal with their stuff. But yeah, learning how to sit with yourself and be comfortable with yourself is
It's very uncomfortable. It's very hard, but it's
Yeah,
It
but it's
helps.
worth it.
It's
Just
worth
being, there are plenty of people I know who are not okay in their own company, and that's sad because it's something you need to work on. You know, the idea of being able to find your own peace of mind on your own by yourself. It's something you can't really explain to anybody
yeah.
until you've found it. Like I can't tell you what it is, but it's just like if you're able to do that, sit quietly.
I was forced to sit with myself recently. My son finally got a diagnosis, and I'm trying to call my friend that's a psychiatrist. I'm like, bitch, I need you. Where are you? And she didn't call me back for 2 weeks. And I was just
Aye.
too late. I was forced to sit with this, and I'm okay now. She goes, oh, well, look, it worked. I was like,
See, that was my
I was
strategy.
like,
That's
come
why
on, man.
I made you sit with it. That's why I didn't
She
call you
was
back for
just,
2
yeah,
weeks.
she was just so busy. And I don't take it personal because it's like, all right,
Totally,
we all
yeah.
have lives. But I was just like, I needed you.
Right? No, I get
But
it.
it helps. It's, just
Yeah.
sit with yourself. Like,
It
why
does.
do you really feel this way?
Yeah. Well, we all get caught up. We all get busy. We all get disconnected from ourselves. And again, I spent my 30s, like I said, living in my head. I was just disconnected from my body and everything. It made things that much more difficult. So just being able to reconnect with yourself on a lot of levels is helpful. So
Yeah.
whatever small steps you need to take, and no sweeping changes are going to happen overnight. That's fine. They don't happen for anybody. Even if it's just incremental. If you start, hey, that's it. I had to get my mind together before I was able to get my body together and lose weight and get in better shape and all of that stuff. But that took like only through therapy. It was just like, oh, right, I this is better. So now I can start working on this.
But can we just talk about how fitness
Oh, God,
helps
yeah.
your mental health tremendously?
God, yeah. That's something
That's
and Sally
and
will
Sally
attest
and
to
I
as well.
have a podcast.
You do.
About fitness, and we talk about that. And I got into fitness specifically for my mental health.
Mm.
I was struggling. I was not okay, and I needed to put that anger somewhere. So
Yeah.
I'd rather pick heavy stuff up and throw them down than to just throw down everybody else.
Then to pick on my husband.
Yeah, I mean,
Better than throwing him down. But no, that's definitely a part of it. Just being able to
Yeah.
just to physically engage yourself in a way. It's just, and it releases endorphins. There's obviously a lot of, biological benefits
Yeah.
to it, which is really helpful. But yeah, that's another thing. Just the more I've gotten, again, even taking a walk, even something as small as that, which is kind of how I started losing weight and saying, I'm going to take an hour walk every day. In like spring of 2021, when I actually actively started to like lose weight after I, cut a bunch of crap out of my diet. But
food plays a part.
food really does.
Yeah.
It really, really does.
And we talk about
cleaning
that
up
on
your
the other
diet's easy too.
podcast,
Yeah,
too.
that can
Like,
be.
that's man.
It's very easy to toxify yourself with
Yeah.
food. But to help get all that stuff out, yeah, totally. It's like being able to work out and just go to the gym, or even as simple as taking a walk. Helpful. Getting into nature, like Ash said, to ground yourself.
I love nature. Go hug a tree.
There you go.
Go
sit-
go.
Christian's rolling his eyes, but like he's. It looked like eye
I
rolling.
was like,
Put
like
your
eye
feet in
rolling.
some grass.
Touch grass, as the
yeah.
kids say. Even though they don't do it, everyone just wants to say it on social media. Like, you need to go touch grass. Meanwhile, they don't fucking touch any grass. They're just being anonymous smartasses. Anyway, yeah. getting in nature. Okay, so it's more than 3 things we're getting.
Oh
in.
yeah, we just
And
threw a whole bunch out there.
A laundry list of people you can follow for some help. And while you're following new people, you can follow Ash Lazu at, is it Ash_Lazu?
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. And the Wax Guru as well. Links, of course, in the episode description.
And Exposed with Ash.
Exposed with Ash.
But
No
it's with
E.
the X.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a
She dropped
X.
the E. She starts it with an X, so it sounds cool. That's right. Because
what
people are
is it?
just like, I'm going to check out this OnlyFans. It's a podcast. Ooh.
That's a good one.
I mean, when you said I'm starting Exposed with Ash, I was like, really? Again, you're very married, but
Very
I'm a
married.
sick man. So, anyway, yeah, you guys can laugh at that. That's okay.
It's the heads like this. It's hysterical.
Well, Christian knows to expect nothing less. I mean, I think as a part of him is still surprised. He's like, you're saying it while she's in the room. Like, I know. She knows me.
We like transparency over here. Like,
Right? But at the same time, it's okay. Like, I'm joking. Like, it's
Yeah.
all well-intentioned. This isn't performative for the show. This is genuinely just like, I probably made that joke to you before, honestly, when you announced you're doing Exposed with Ash. I probably told you that. I was like,
what's
this?
exposed?
Yeah, what do you mean exposed? And is Jacob okay with this? But yeah, Exposed with Ash coming soon. Stay tuned to, follow Ash Lazu.
Yeah.
And you'll know more about that. And hey, because he was here laughing inappropriately, you should also follow Christian on Twix at ArcadePlayer1 and on Instagram and TikTok at Arcade Productions, and check out his YouTube channel.
He's giving us
as
a thumbs
well.
up.
He is giving a thumbs up because he's not going to pop on screen now because he's got his hood up and he's like, I'm tired, man. Let's get out of here. It's been 3 hours. All right. And why not? You can also follow Sally at MindMix everywhere on all the socials. As she's
But
sitting
we
here also
do
laughing inappropriately.
Yeah, we do have a podcast.
And yes,
that's gonna
your
be
podcast,
premiering
sorry.
soon. No.
It's coming.
Bravely Fit.
Okay.
Oh, are we supposed to announce it?
Yeah, we can.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, Bravely Fit, where we do talk about our fitness journeys and what's gotten us there, and
Nice.
it's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Is that going to, I'm sure it is with two of
Yes.
you. Is that going to be on the Bravery Studios channel?
Mhm.
Okay, so Bravery Studios YouTube channel, I'll put a link in the description as well. So you can head over there, subscribe. So when that shows up, people can check it out. And, well, we've done it. We've talked a lot. Hopefully we've
Yes.
helped a few people
Yeah.
through sharing our stories and all of that, which again, that's just the whole point. It's actually very liberating to talk about stuff like this, even though it's not necessarily easy. And I still find myself pausing in certain moments when I feel myself emotionally going to a certain place, but it's like, it still helps. And knowing that, I'm not inhibited about putting certain things out there. Hopefully there's something you're like, oh, okay, I can identify with that, or I understand that, or hopefully that helps you in some way, anything that I've said or Ash has said. If it helps you,
Great.
helps you to take care of yourself, exactly, then great. That's what we're here for. And we're also here to entertain you. We'll be back doing that another episode again next Monday. So until next time, for Wax Guru Ash Lazu and Christian Cortez and Mind Mix, this is Chris Aballo, and this was yet another experiment.